Welcome to another episode of the Cowboy Experience. I'm Eric Sims, your CX Cowboy, and today we're sitting in the Texas Museum of Music here in East Austin, and I'm joined by Cory Cross, music artist here in Texas. I've been doing this for a while. Thanks for coming out to the show, man.
Thanks for having me.
It's been I've been watching you for a while, so I was excited to hear that we were going to get to sit down and chat for a little bit. So
appreciate it.
Typically with the show, we kind of just start out with talking a little bit about the person, and maybe a little background for those people who are watching that may not know who you are, like a little bit about where you're from and what you're about.
Yeah, well, I'm born and raised Fort Worth, Texas. I've been playing music for a long time. I started playing music in church when I was like 8 or 9, playing drums.
Okay.
My parents were pastors, and my mom still is a pastor. And then I started playing country music when I was like 16 or 17. I think the first song I learned on the guitar was Willie Nelson, My Heroes Have Always Been Cowboys.
It's a good one.
Yeah, and then, I've been playing music ever since. I played my first show, I think when I was 17 or 18, straight out of high school. Lived in Austin for a little bit, rambled around.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So grew up as a pastor's kid, and started playing in your first music experience with church, which I know for some, it's very kind of common. You see that in a lot of people that have that in their background.
Yeah.
But maybe talk a little bit about what was it like, and what were some of the influences at that point in time?
Well, at that point in time, personally, my influences were, I was sort of rebelling against. So it's kind of like, it's kind of different because it was like I first started playing music in church, but the first music that I really got into was like gangster rap and punk rock.
Okay.
Sort of rebelling again because we couldn't listen to secular music in the household. So it's like I'm learning how to play the drums and learning how to play the guitar, and I'm learning these church songs, worship songs. But then I'm staying up late with my little radio, listening to K104, which was the hip hop station, and 94.5, The Edge, which played rock and roll. Yeah. And so, man. But I've always wanted I've always wanted to play music since I can remember. When I was in 5th grade, I wanted to be a rapper, like Bone Thugs and Harmony.
Yeah.
And then when I got into punk rock and stuff, I wanted to play drums in a punk rock band, and so it's all I've ever wanted to do. Really.
Yeah, I think that I listen to you say that, I feel like it's the same story. I grew up in the church. Yeah. I can remember my parents throwing my Motley Crue tape out the window when they the car driving down the road, because it was like, you can't listen to this.
Dude, okay, I got to tell you this story. This is the wildest story. Okay, so Napster, burn CDs, you remember?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay, so my buddy, he was our illegally downloaded music dealer.
Okay.
Because we didn't know how to do it. He was like a computer whiz. So I would just tell him hey, I want a bunch of Eminem and Korn, and he would just get on Napster, and a couple days he'd bring it to school, blank CD, and it would just write Korn and Eminem on it. So I had a collection of all these. And it was David Allan Coe, Korn, Eminem, Bone Thugs and Harmony, Tupac, just all this music that I obviously had to hide from my parents. Yeah. And so one day I'm in middle school, and my dad, he picks me up. Normally he didn't do that. Normally I rode the bus home. He picks me up from school, and he's like, "Hey, we're going to go to the church. You can help me with something." And I was like, "Okay." I wasn't too out of the ordinary. So he's like, we get to the church. He's like, "Come into the sanctuary. We're going to pray for a little bit." Again, not too out of the ordinary.
Right.
I was like, okay, he's, wants to pray. That's fine. He's like, "I'm going to go put some music on." Nobody else is in the sanctuary. Yeah. Nobody else is in the church. So I sit on the front row, and I'm just getting ready to sort of pray or act like I'm praying or whatever. And he goes to the back, and all of a sudden, man, just Eminem blaring through the sanctuary speakers. And I was like, "No, what's happening?" Yeah. And he just let it play. Eminem, Korn, no effects, and I was just sitting there, and he was like, and then eventually he stops, and he's like, "How does that make you feel?" I was like, "Bad, real bad." So, and then I gave it up for a couple of days, and then I was back on my stuff.
Yeah, I think so. Pretty eclectic influences, though. I think.
Yeah, when I was that young.
Yeah,
sure.
And I think all that bleeds into, just looking back on my life, that bled a lot into who I became and things I connected with, because it was, I'm older than you, so for me it was NWA and Eazy-E.
Yeah, man.
And then some of that old hard rock, but very similar in story in that sense. So you know, being it sounds like it was kind of that traditional Texas Christian environment, you know, that you grew up in. And there's great things about that with my experience, and then there's things that are really challenging
Sure.
with that too, because it's in the moment it feels very smothering and suffocating, right? And so there are some people that are built to kind of adhere, and they will they'll hear their parents play a record in the church, and they'll be like, I'm never doing that again.
Yeah, totally.
And then there's other people that are like, 3 days later,
yeah, back home.
I'm good.
Totally. Yeah.
You know, and so how is, you know, did that continue in your life as you were going through things? Like, it's like, I don't want to say rebellious, but to a certain extent, maybe that's a way to define it. Is like, you don't like to color in the lines. Maybe that's a better way to put it.
That I would call it rebellious.
Okay.
You know, I definitely would, because even, you know, when I got older and, you know, 16, 17, when I really started getting into country music, what drew me to that was the rebellious spirit of, you know, I mean, really, it was like I heard Cross Canadian Ragweed and Pat Green singing about getting high, and I was like, wait, you can listen to country music and get high? Cool, man, I'm in, you know? And so, yeah, I would say sort of just rebelling against what's expected, you know, because also a lot of people in the church, as the pastor's kid, and then I was the oldest, it was like, you know, you're definitely going to be a pastor. You're definitely going to be a worship leader.
Right.
And so just sort of rebelling against, whatever's expected. And that attitude that, you know, guys like Waylon and Willie had about, you know, rebelling against maybe like what popular country might be, or, you know, but yeah, doing your own thing or doing my own thing was something that definitely stayed with me. But then, you know, the irony now is that, you know, after, you know, I went out and, you know, kind of raised hell and sowed my wild oats, now I'm going back to, you know, those things that I was taught as a kid, and those spiritual principles and that, you know, that standard of living, and it's still there, and I was able to bring that out now as a grown man, where I'm like, you know, wanting to settle down or settling down and, you know, things like that. So
well, you're kind of moving to the next subject I was going to talk to you a little bit. I know you're open about this because we talked about it before the show, and I've seen you talk about it openly. But, you know, your path did not always stay very bright and shining, as I would say. You had some dark days. Maybe you want to share a little bit about just kind of how that transpired, because I get the outlaw thing, right? Like for me, it was very similar. It was like I was attracted. That was what attracted me to certain music, was the whole piece of like anti-establishment. You're not going to tell me what to do. I'm going to be my own person. And I was really attracted to my first experiences with country was Willie and those guys too, because it was kind of like it was a different, kind of a middle finger to the normal way of doing things. Like, we're going to be ourselves, and I attached myself to that as well. But maybe share a little bit about just how, you know, how everything unfolded for you, you know, with that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, kind of like I mentioned, I always gravitated towards the really rebellious music, and I always bought into the lifestyle of whatever that music was talking about. You know, I wasn't able to differentiate the lifestyle from the art, from the song. You know? And so when I started getting into country music, and I heard, you know, stories about Keith Whitley, you know, being you know, how much he was drinking, and George Jones, and, you know, him being out there raising hell and drinking in the morning, and, you know, Townes Van Zandt, you know, all these stories of these guys that I was idolizing. In my mind at 17, 18, I was like, okay, so that's what it takes to be able to write these songs filled with pain and insight and stuff. So I kind of set out to live that lifestyle, not realizing that the logistics of that lifestyle are very difficult. And takes a toll on your body, your spirit, your mind. And so I found myself, my decisions led me to a pretty severe addiction, you know. And again, the irony is that it got to a point where my addiction was so out of hand, I couldn't even play music. So I lost the thing that I was trying to, you know, that was most important to me. Yeah.
That's what the end of that road looks like.
Totally.
You know, it takes what you love most.
Yeah.
And, so obviously you're on the other end of something like that now, but how many years was that you were kind of in and out of music and dealing with your addiction and things like that? Was that
Yeah,
a good amount of time?
it was. I'm 37 now. I think I went to detox for alcohol for the first time when I was 23.
Okay.
So by the time I was 23, 24, it had already gotten to the point where I was so physically addicted that it was dangerous for me to quit drinking.
Okay.
And so that's when I kind of first started to, you know, maybe contemplate, maybe getting sober. And there were a few kind of half-hearted attempts here and there. And it just ended up getting worse and worse and worse. And, you know, got to the point where it, you know, put me out on the street and, you know, losing everything. Not just like I can't hold down a job or I can't play music, just losing everything. Like my family setting boundaries, you know, that they, you know, it was just, it got way worse than I ever thought that it could. And, so yeah, and you know, I made a decision to seek help and make that decision every day still. You know, that's my prayer every morning to God, is that, you know, He'd help me stay sober for the day. And now I'm grateful. It's been coming up on 3 years that God's kept me sober with a lot of help from my family now, and, you know, my fiance and my friends and other people who have gone through the same things.
Yeah.
And now the great thing is my music is at a place, and my music career is at a place that, you know, it's better than it ever has been. You know, and so and the cool thing now too is I can write songs, you know, about that lifestyle and take that pain that I remember and put them in the songs without having to live those songs out.
Yeah.
'Cause I found I couldn't live the songs and write the songs.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you can't you can't write in the middle of it.
Right. Exactly.
And so, you know, you're blessed enough to get to the other side, you know, and find your sobriety and a relationship with God and get back on track. And you know, it's a lot of people that are watching that may not understand that or have somebody they know that's been through that. When you're in the midst of it, it's not like you're purposely trying to destroy everything you're doing. There's this just weird point where it's like, and most people guys will say like, I don't know when I crossed that line, but I did, and then it became something totally different, you know. And so I'm glad to hear you're doing good. And on the other side of that, I mean, your music reflects that. And that's one of the things I find interesting about your music too, is that you're able to blend that outlaw stuff, you know, with a fresh perspective, you know, and turn that into something that people enjoy listening to and dancing to and things like that. And so maybe that's what I was going to ask you, maybe just share a little bit about like when you're doing your songwriting. And I'm always interested in song. I can't songwrite. I told you that before. You know, never even tried to write a song because I can't. But the musicians that we talk to and then we've become friends with, I'm just enamored with like that process because it's poetry, right? Like it's really what it boils down to. It's a beautiful art, and I think when you tie in the Texas piece, for me, I think it's even more so. But you're looking at it. What's your process? Like, how do you do that? And you know, if you care to share about anything.
Totally, yeah. It's changed a lot over the years. When I first started writing songs, I thought that it had to be this like overwhelming inspiration that just like came like a lightning bolt, and a lot of times it did happen like that, you know. And then as I got older, it became more of something that became more of a skill that I tried to develop. So I would sit down and be like, okay, I'm maybe not feeling very inspired right now, but let me sit down and write a waltz in the key of E about, you know, getting cheated on. And so, and then that sort of developed. And so now it's gotten to the point where I have a notes app, so I do get that inspiration every now and then. So I have a notes app, so if I get like a lyric or a song title or just a little bit here and there, I'll put it in the notes app. And then a lot of times the way it works is like we have a project coming out. So, you know, maybe it's a big show or maybe our live shows, I've noticed there's like a spot where maybe we lose the dancers a little bit or something, or maybe it's like I noticed that this song really is resonating well, maybe with some people online or in a live setting. Okay, well, let me think about that song and then sit down and write maybe something similar with a different twist. So it's a little more purposeful now, but I think it's because I developed that skill over the years of just being able to like sit down and just put words together that sound pleasant and make sense and rhyme and, you know, put it over some, you know, 3 chords, 4 chords. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
And you know, when you're looking at, because I mean, you've got the church influence, you've got the addiction and wildlife influence, and then you've got the recovery piece kind of, or restoration, whatever it's new life kind of perspective. Do you camp out in any area, or do you feel like they all really just kind of push into what you do in totality?
They definitely overlap. And sometimes there are like, issues, maybe something that I really want to get out. I really want to memorialize, sort of.
Right.
So it could be, just something that I'm thinking about. Like, I mean, I'll give you an example, actually. I've been thinking a lot about, I've been rediscovering my faith and my relationship to Jesus. And, when I was a kid, Jesus was this sort of far off character, maybe not very personable, maybe a little intimidating, and as I've gotten older, I'm sort of redefining that relationship, my relationship with God, and trying to bring him in a little closer. So I had this idea of, Jesus as my friend. And so then I was like, okay, maybe this is like a gospel song. So this is something that I've been working on because I just feel like I want to get it out, and putting it in a song will help me process and, kind of memorialize it, and put it out there. And I believe that's, in those cases, it's more of a sort of inspiration, maybe even a divine sort of inspiration. But then on the other hand, sometimes we just need a song that's going to get people dancing because we know we're going to be on tour. And so it's like, let me just write a cheating song that's going to get people out and, make them smile and, get the boots on the floor.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I didn't even think about until we had several conversations with some other artists we know here, is how much the dance environment and movement here influences songwriting. And they were saying like, we're, we want. There's sometimes we write songs and we're like, well, we can't play that one because nobody will dance.
1,000%.
It'll piss all the dancers off,
1,000%.
And so I was like, wow, that's something that's interesting. That's another component when you're looking at writing your music. That's like, okay, I've also got to think about how this is going to be received, and not even just the message, but the flow of which that message is.
Sonically in the room, because people, I mean, they're at a honky tonk, they're drinking, they're trying to not think, right? So they're not, they just, it's a very subconscious sort of process. They just hear a little twang and hear a little, hear my voice, and that's going to perk their ears or not perk their ears.
Right.
So we definitely have to think, I definitely think about those things. The beauty is when you can kind of combine all of it into something. And guys like, like Gary Stewart, he's writing these songs that are, personal and beautiful and well put together, but you can dance to them. I love that kind of stuff.
Yep. I think that's, like there's times where that magic happens for people. And the fact that you've been able to get a little more intentional about some of that stuff is pretty cool. Cause I think there's some artists that they struggle to get there with that piece. They creating that formula for themselves. But I think, did you get that out of your recovery work? Did you formulate that? Because I know, like, going through recovery, like, you get into, like, routines big, right? Like, first, and, like, just getting yourself on a routine, and that routine teaches you, if I'm methodical about what I do, I'll get better at what I'm doing, right? Did that influence that at all?
A little bit. I kind of set aside, I kind of had to set aside a lot of music stuff when I was first getting into my recovery. So I'd really tried to put that out of my mind. But then, anytime I'm doing like introspection, like, step fours and stuff like that, I'm always sort of thinking, oh, that could be a song, or that could be a lyric,
I was wondering, like, so as I said, I've asked this question to a lot of guys, and as I've learned about it, I was like, one of the guys, a couple of them have said, and I was telling Gio this, like, when we were talking about after one of the shows, I was like, a lot of guys talk about how they take notes or journal, and they just, when they see something or feel something or do something, it's not like they're sitting down to write a song. And then when they go to write music, they kind of go back and reflect on those things. And I was like, well, that sounds a lot like when I journal.
Totally.
Like, and I write, because that's how I process going through my recovery. And I was thinking, like, that's a great way. That exercise seems very similar. There's a lot of revelation that comes out when you're just putting pen to paper.
Totally.
And so I was wondering if that influenced your writing at all, going through that process, because it becomes habitual. And I don't know about you, like, if I don't do those things on a regular basis without purpose, like there's times where you sit down and and again, I hear you talking about songwriting. I write like that too when I'm talking about my spiritual life. I'll have a purpose. I'm like, I'm going to look at this. I'm going to study this and write about this. But there's other times where I'm just like, I'm just going to kind of sit here and feel the feel and write about what the hell is going on. You know, and that sometimes is like when the coolest stuff comes out. So
man.
That's neat that it's like that for you with your songwriting, and you've been able to get into that space. I think to me that's where there's a lot of authenticity when we get into those spaces of like not trying to like really control, just letting the habit part of us take over, but the spiritual part come out in whatever we're doing.
100%. And people gravitate towards truth in music.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, I'm not one of those guys that like hates too much on pop country because, I mean, Alan Jackson was pop country when he came out, so but the thing between like maybe some of that country or any kind of music that has 25 songwriters on the credit list is maybe some of that authenticity gets lost. Maybe some of that truth gets lost, and so I try to put some of that, to put some personal truth into each song, even if it is just a dance song or something.
Is that process therapeutic for you, like in a way of like just releasing and spiritual kind of thing?
Totally, especially maybe if it's a sort of uncomfortable memory or something, just putting in a song, and it's kind of like you can just leave it there, or you can revisit it if you need to process it a little more.
I was wondering, just looking at, I'm not trying to turn this into a recovery episode, even though that's between the two of us, that's the majority of our life. But I look at that and I'm like, there's, when you were explaining this earlier, I was like, when you're looking at your past and you're like, I've been able to kind of look back differently. I know part of it's like when you're early on, when you're looking back at your past, it's real painful. But there comes a point where you've evaluated it through that 4-step or some of the other stuff, and you can look at it almost like a separate person, like and then you're able to evaluate the circumstances and the feelings and the things involved. And it sounds like that's somewhat what you do with your songwriting at times too, is you're able to segment that out and look at it a little more objectively, without feeling the nastiness of it. The sting. That's probably a great way to put it. That's cool, man. Like, I think that's a really unique part of, I don't know. You don't hear that a lot. Like, you don't hear a lot of guys go like, hey, you hear about the crashing and burning a lot, right? You don't hear about the other side of that of, hey man, I work on my relationship with Jesus, and I write country music, and I get to hang out in honky tonks and do fun stuff. So, well, you just had an album come out, right? You just released,
our first full length album. So we've put out some singles and EPs here and there, but this was a big project, 14 songs. Because over the last 3 years, I've gotten some guys together that we've been playing regularly, and the sound kind of developed. And so, we put 14 songs together and released it. That came out, I believe in July. The title track is called "There's More," and that's probably the most personal song I've ever written. Kind of about hope, just hoping there's more, believing that there's more after whatever tragedy maybe, but then there's a lot of honky tonk on that album. I'm acting like I don't know when it came out or whatever, but I downloaded it as soon as it did. So it's great. It's really good. I've been listening to it and I enjoy it. Thank you.
And even my kids who I brainwash in the car, I'll catch them now, like they'll sing all the words to some of your songs or anything else. I'm like, all right, they're gonna be all right, because no matter where they go, at some point in time later in life, they'll be like, oh, Dad used to play this song. So well, that's cool. So you got that out. It's going well. And one of the other things you've got going really well, at least in my opinion, you've done a great job with your social media presence. And a lot of people don't realize how important that is in today's musician world. Where, hey, it's not like it used to be where, these big labels come walking in, send their guy in to sit and up at the Longhorn Saloon in Fort Worth or wherever it is. Like, it's all about TikToks and Instagrams. So how'd you get into that part? Because you're doing a good job at it.
Thank you, man. So it was like 2 years ago, and I mean, I had been, posting pictures and stuff on Instagram to promote shows, and then I was like, well, let me try TikTok out and let me just see. If it doesn't do anything, I'm not going to stay. I'm not going to keep trying, I was like, let's just see how it goes. And within like 3 or 4 months, and I was just doing silly stuff, man. And within like 3 or 4 months, our listeners like quadrupled on Spotify. Like went from like 500 monthly listeners, jumped up at one point to like 50,000.
Oh, wow. So it's a huge jump.
Huge jump. And that's all I wanted to do was like, I just wanted more people to go to the music. And yeah, and so I kept going.
Yeah.
It's worked on Instagram too. I mean, we've jumped up, we got, I think a year ago I had maybe like 3,000 followers. Now I'm at like 60,000, which I try not to focus on the numbers because a lot of that doesn't really matter. Really what I try to focus on is who's listening to my music and the opportunities that we're getting our music, who's listening to our music, and then the opportunities that we're getting to play
Because
music.
of that, yeah.
Yes. So that's really the only thing that I try to gauge, and it's been helpful.
Yeah.
People have reached out about shows and tours and opening up for bands that we love, and co-writing. I've been able to co-write with some guys that I've, been a fan of for a long time. And so
Can you say who?
Well, there's this one band, man. We got to open up for Cory Morrow.
Okay.
Which was, that was like I never would have expected we'd be able to play with Cory Morrow.
Yeah.
We opened up for Martina McBride in Dallas, and so things like that, So if it keeps working, I'll keep putting these silly little videos out. But
well, I mean, it's the monster to be part of. Like it's like that's where everybody's going. Even with like sports is like turning into that, like for young athletes and everything like that. So that's cool. So you kind of just learned your way through doing it.
I mean, I guess I have a knack for it. I don't know how.
You do. Yeah. Like, you hear some people like they hired somebody or they used this or that, but so you're doing yours yourself.
Just all myself.
Yeah. Then you figured it out. You got a knack for it.
Yeah. I don't know how.
Well, I mean, some of it's just personality and willingness to be out there, right? Like some guys, it's just, and I think for some people it's tough. Like they're not comfortable with it.
Personally, it was like, it felt like I was just putting out commercials every time I was posting anything. And I was like, nobody wants to just be like bombarded with, hey, listen to my music, come to my show. And I understand, and we all have to promote.
Right.
But, I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to try and develop some sort of social media presence, let me just make it a little more lighthearted, maybe just a peek into my own daily life, maybe a little self-deprecating humor. So it's not just constantly like throwing a commercial at everybody.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the formula, and that goes back to people. We talk about this all the time. People are interested in who you are and what you're doing. They want to hear your music or whatever it is you do as well. But what really gets them attached to you is getting to know you and what you're about and what you're doing. And
a connection. Like, maybe a little joke or a little meme or something. It's like, oh, I think that same way. And then there's like a connection.
Yep, common ground and then all kind of stuff. So it's, again, same thing you do with music, right? Like you're trying to get it's about connecting and telling 100%. A story and leaving people with some type of feeling or emotion or something like that. So that's pretty cool. So kudos to you, because
thank you.
Again, there's a lot of people out there that struggle with that part of it. They're good songwriters and they're good performers. And you're getting traction with that. So that's cool. So what right now you've been playing some more shows. Like, is there a favorite spot you have right now that's or that you've played that you're like, hey, this is my, if I could play there every day and night, I love this place.
Yeah, I mean, we love Fort Worth.
Okay.
That's our home base. There's a place called The Post in Fort Worth that unfortunately closed down, but that was our spot.
Yeah. Where was that over at?
That was over on River East, so kind of close to the Stockyards.
Yeah.
Kind of over there.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Stockyards, we have a show at Pearl Saloon, which is a legendary place down there. So we're really excited to play there. I've got a music video that we did there. It's an acoustic version of the title track from the album, There's More.
Okay.
So we did an acoustic version, just me and some electric guitar and steel guitar. And we had some dancers. We played in the middle of the dance floor, and had two-steppers just dancing around us. Yeah, this group called the Fort Worth Wranglers. So we love Fort Worth, love the Post, love the Stockyards. We really like coming down to Austin. I mean, we're playing at Whitehorse. I look forward to playing at Whitehorse every month.
It's a great spot.
I love it so much. Like, it is, I mean, the people are engaging, the guys that run it, the guys and girls that run it, they're just super, like, kind, and the sound guys are just really kind and generous and helpful. We love playing Whitehorse. Sagebrush is another place here in Austin that we love playing. So and then we've gone out to Los Angeles too. We've been treated really well out there. We've gone out there a couple years in a row. And then up in New York City, there's a couple guys, DJ Moonshine and DJ Prison Rodeo. They've been doing these dances. Basically, it's called Honky Tonkin' Queens. It's just
cool.
a big country show, and
Yeah.
so they bring in people, a lot of country musicians from Austin, and it just packs out. So actually, I did one with Aaron McDonald
Up there.
there.
Yeah.
It was on a boat. It was like a special thing. So it was
Yeah.
like honky tonkin' on a boat, and it was like a cruise around, Manhattan.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, but we love going up to New York too.
That's good. I think he's in LA right now. I think
Oh,
he's
really?
doing a show up there. Yeah, he's a good dude. I like him a lot. And so that's why that's cool. I always like to ask that question. It's because there's so many epic places to play here, in Texas in general.
Yeah.
And then you bring up, because you get this because you're a Fort Worth guy. Like Fort Worth, the music scene and the honky tonk scene. Growing up there, it's like, well, this is the real honky tonk scene, and
Totally.
then everywhere else is like wannabes.
Totally. Yeah. That was the attitude.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, but what I realized when I got down here was, it is different. It is different, but it's really cool. It's the dance scene's great. The musicians are unbelievable.
Yeah.
And Fort Worth, I think, has a better scene. When I was growing up, it was much smaller. So it's taken off. But there's so many great places to play up there now. Like back then it was Whitehorse there, Longhorn, and of course Billy Bob's and Post and a couple other places. There weren't a lot, there was, so the variety there is much greater in the scene, and there's so much more tourism than there used to be. So when you guys are playing, you're getting opportunities to play in front of crowds that would be, I would equate to like when people go to Nashville. Like there's a lot of people that fly and come to Austin and come to Fort Worth now. I mean, that new over by the Drover and all that kind of stuff, like it attracts a ton of people.
Yeah, we play at Second Rodeo. I do a little solo and duo stuff there, right by the Drover. The Drover's beautiful. I played the Drover too, and I mean, we'll play. People come up from Canada, Minnesota, all over. I love how regional country music is too. So, it's just a different sort of flavor. Like Fort Worth, I feel like has some really amazing like songwriters. In fact, they have a songwriters festival going on right now. And like, there's an emphasis on, just quality songwriting. Whereas Austin, there's maybe more of an emphasis on the dance culture and, full band, so it's just different. It's all great, but it's just a different sort of flavor, and even you get down into San Antonio, we love playing the Lonesome Rose, and, there's just different flavors.
Well, and you get so many different influences here, because then you get, depending on where you are, the influence is based on a lot of if people are from there, and once they get there, the territory, right? Like you got these West Texas guys that are writing music, and we had Hayden Redwine on the show not too long ago. Like his writing style is a little bit different, And then there's that what is it, Rye Wolf or Ree Wolf that's out that way, and he's bringing in some blues and some other stuff. So then and then you get some stuff to get like a lot of Spanish influence or Mexican influence in their music, which I think you mentioned before the show. You were kicking around the idea of at some point in time.
Yeah, I love Tejano music. I don't really speak Spanish too well, but I would love to do some Tejano songs. Like I love that stuff.
A little Texas tornado-ish. Like,
exactly. And you get that, you get that stuff, down in San Antonio. Like Garrett Capps. He's a great musician, songwriter, and he's got some of that flavor going on down there.
Yeah,
and,
yeah. I mean, I think that's cool. That's a really unique part of the state. Is that it's almost like being in 3 or 4 different countries at times with that amount of flavor. So, so what's up next for you? Like, what are you doing? I know you're touring around. The album release, you're making the way around and trying to get your music and play your music for as many people as you can.
Yeah.
But where do you, when you look into the future a little bit and daydream, is there anything that, past this December, I know you got a big date coming up.
Getting married.
So
I can't wait.
That's so cool. And how'd you meet her?
We met in Shreveport, Louisiana, actually. I was there. I actually had moved to Shreveport to work for a ministry to help with like the music program, some other things. And then I ended up just settling down there. And I was actually every weekend driving to DFW to play shows. Okay. And then driving back to Shreveport. And that's where we met. And then coming up on a year ago, we moved back to the Fort Worth area, to Keller. We get married in December. We can't wait. So this is like our last little like sort of push until then. You know, we got some shows coming up, and then a big break, big honeymoon break. We're going to Malibu and hanging out. So, and then we start recording the our follow-up album, full length, in January at Cloudland Studios in Fort Worth. A guy named Joe Tacky, he's there. And so we'll put out this new album that'll be rolling out next year. And man, really, we'd like to. I mean, we've hit some markets that, you know, we're really happy with. Like, we just got back from Nashville, and, you know, we've made some friends out in Los Angeles and up in New York. But, you know, we'd really like to do some, I mean, this year coming up, we'd like to hit some spots that we haven't hit. We'd like to be out on the road, you know. Yeah. So, yeah.
That's cool. Any dream spots to go? Like, you know, you're like, hey.
We'd like to go overseas. Okay. So we actually have quite a few listeners. Like, I did an interview with a radio station in the UK, in Essex. They reached out to me and they were like, hey, a bunch of our listeners have been requesting your songs. And I was like, yeah. So I had no idea. And so we'd love to go out there. There's like a festival that they do out there called Country to Country, Sea to Sea. You know, we'd love to do something like that. We have listeners, quite a few in like Sweden and Germany. We'd like to tour out there. So
yeah, that'd be cool.
That's like the big dream coming up. And is to hit.
Well, it's, you know, see the world and play in front of those audiences. Yeah, I mean, and that's another thing I think is just so cool about the time we're in with the way that again, TikTok and some of this stuff opened the door for it. Like, you know, back in before all that was available, your music was only going as far as the radio played it. You know, and now that's completely altered because, you know, here you are, and you got fans in the UK, and you got fans over in Germany, like all over. You know? So
it's unbelievable.
That's pretty neat. So so that wedding, big deal. New album, huge deal too. Yeah. And then hopefully a big tour, and so that's a lot. That's a lot to take on in the next 12 months. When you're looking at doing all that, how do you stay you? You know, because it's easy, I would think, at least, you know, I can only look at it from a bit, like when I look at business, when you start running, it's easy to get your head above too far out in front of your boots, right? How do you do that? How do you keep yourself kind of lined up and not get it too out there?
Totally. A lot of prayer and, you know, routine. Yeah. You know, so, I mean, Abby's my beautiful fiance. We go to church every Sunday. We go to the same church when we can, when I'm in town. We have a community there. My family's there in Fort Worth. And then I try to kind of gauge my soul, I guess. You know, you can kind of feel, at least I can kind of feel when things are a little out of balance. Yeah. If I'm feeling maybe a little bit testy, or if I'm paying too much attention, if I'm checking like Spotify for artists, you know, too often, checking on my numbers too often, maybe stressing over posts, or just stressing, you know, taking a step back and being okay with taking a step back. Yeah. And then, you know, being honest with the people, you know, my community around me, you know, Abby and my family in Fort Worth, you know, letting them know, checking in, you know, what are y'all seeing that maybe I'm not seeing? Are we doing all right? Or, you know, so, a lot of help from the people around me.
That's good.
Prayer.
That's good. I mean, you got to remain open to that, to let that happen. That's good. You're in a place that you're willing to let people speak in and do that. But I think the other stuff you're doing positions you for that, right? Like, you know,
and just not holding on to everything. I can't hold on too tight. You know, this is all I've ever wanted to do ever in my entire life. But I can't be desperate about it. You know, for me personally, I have to trust God to open doors, to lay a path out before me, you know, because if I'm just trying to do everything, you know, I'll work myself up, and then I'll mess things up. Yeah. You know, so just trying to hold on with, I think there's a saying, hold on with a loose hand. Yeah. You know,
that's a great way to put it. I think that's for anybody. You know, like in whether you're in whatever business you're in, or whatever art you perform, or even as a parent, you know, like the tighter you squeeze, you know, I always joke, like you're like Tommy Boy with a biscuit, you know, like the tighter you squeeze it, you're like, you know, and we all can get there, you know, but, you know, I think the fact that you've been to the rock bottom, you know, to name one of your songs, but you've been there, so that you've got that perspective of, hey, like if I don't keep a loose grip, you know, things can twist off in a bad direction. Maybe not back to that, but they can still go in a bad direction,
Yeah.
you know, that you don't want them to go into. So, I mean, man, I'm impressed with what we've been doing. And like I said, we've been cheering you on from the side.
Thank
I
you.
just was so excited to have you on the show.
Thank you.
And I think, are you going to play us a song while you're here today?
I can.
Yeah.
Definitely could.
We'd love to have you play something if you got your stuff with you.
Yeah.
And then, so why don't we take a break and get that set up?
Sounds good. Darling, darling, you get on the same me now. You'd be ashamed, but you'd be ashamed I let you down. And honey, well, honey, if I could only touch you now, you'd be amazed, but you'd be amazed what's coming around. My love, my love, my love, my love, my love, I chased you for so long. This is goodbye, this is goodbye. I'll leave you in a song. But oh, 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 my love, my life is gone. But oh, 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 the bottom's a lot lower than I thought. And brother, oh brother, the space between us grows. I was a fool, I was a fool, and heaven knows. And Jesus, when Jesus Christ, I'm ready to go home. You know I tried, God, I tried, never more to roam. But oh, 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 my love, my life is going. But oh, 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 the bottom's a lot lower than I thought. The bottom's a lot lower than I thought.
All right, man. Hey, thanks for playing that. It was great having you on the show.
Thank you.
One of the things, if people do want to find you, what's the best way to get in touch with you and locate you online?
I mean, I'm open to Instagram DMs. I mean,
Okay.
to a certain extent.
Yeah.
You know what
Well,
I'm
yeah.
saying?
Don't bombard
But-
you with
Yeah, but what's cool is I get a lot of people that reach out who are in recovery and maybe or thinking about it or even maybe they just started writing songs and they're thinking about getting into playing music. And I love when people reach out about stuff like that. So
Cool.
And on Instagram, I post all my shows and stuff like that. And then I got a website, CoryCrossMusic.com.
Okay.
So
Yeah. So go to his website, check him out on TikTok and on Instagram and all his social media. He does a great job with that stuff. And more importantly, download his new album.
Please.
You can get it on any major distributors like iTunes, Spotify, all that kind of stuff. Check his music out and find out where a show is coming near you and go see one or fly in and come see him if you want to go to the ATX or in Funky Town, Fort Worth. So
That's right.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of The Cowboy Experience. We really appreciate you watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like, and share, and we'll see you next time on The Cowboy Experience. Adios.